This episode is brought to you by IndieBase, the smart, simple and budget-friendly electronic patient report system built for the realities of HEMS work and prehospital care. Whether you're a solo responder, part of a flexible team or working across a large organisation, IndieBase is the right solution for you. So it works on any device, laptop, tablet or smartphone, and crucially it runs offline when you need it the most. So born from trusted foundation of HEMSbase and built by the Medic One systems team, IndieBase combines a familiar intuitive interface with rock solid reliability. So from festival first aid to complex patient transport to high acuity critical care, IndieBase is ready for every prehospital scenario. So it integrates with all popular prehospital monitors and includes powerful case review and indeed clinical governance modules. So it's ideal for maintaining high standards and supporting services preparing for CQC registration. So there's also a dedicated patient feedback module, which when used alongside clinical governance supports continuous improvement and patient-centered care. So for those working across multiple organizations, IndieBase gives you a personal logbook that unifies your data and even integrates with your HEMS-based logbook. So it's quick to deploy, easy to use and built for the field. IndieBase makes electronic patient reporting simple wherever you are. So find out more at indiebase.net. That's INDIEBASE.net or head to the show notes for further information.
You're listening to the Prehospital Care podcast on the Medics Academy Network.
Welcome back to the podcast. This is the second in a two-part series with Carl Betts, my co-host on the Prehospital Care podcast, on his blog post, so the AI transposed blogs. This piece is titled Normal or Numb. I'm here with Carl just to unpack the piece. Welcome to the podcast, Carl.
Hi again, Norton. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks, good. Carl, so just in this week's session, Normal or Numb, could I get you just to maybe just speak to the background and indeed the history of why you wrote the blog?
Yeah, so I wrote the blog because I just had a bit of a profound experience on a particular instant where I was dealing with a deceased person, and seems quite sort of harsh in the reality of it. But while we were dealing with this deceased person, we were also talking about what we were going to have for tea, because it was late on a cold night and we were already quite late for our meal break. And it sort of just hit me like a sledgehammer a few hours later, about how normal is this sort of feeling that I can be dealing with a deceased person, you know, who's got family, who might have kids, but at the same time be thinking about whether I'm going to get a Chinese takeaway for my tea and actually have a conversation with a colleague about it. So this was a really profound, impactful time for me, because this was where I really started thinking about how my work was potentially affecting me. And therefore, if it's affecting me, how is it affecting others? So I wrote this blog. It took me quite a long time to write it, and actually was a really super enjoyable experience. It was cathartic for me, but I also got lots of really interesting feedback from colleagues who I asked to proofread it for a proof of concept, to basically say, well, how does this land? And actually, a few of them, it actually forced them to think about things themselves, because I think there was a few people going down the same journey as I was, and actually sort of my writing was a bit of a catalyst for them. So it was profound in multiple ways, but it was one of the most enjoyable things I've ever written, really.
Yeah, and I think as a diagnostic, it's actually always powerful to sit back and think, gosh, I've had to do the same. Am I fully engaging with the moment? Am I fully engaging with the gravity of the situation? And am I meeting the needs not only of the team but also of the family to engage, on their emotional level? And it's a different pivot, but it's also a diagnostic as to where you are at, as you were saying, and where you are in your journey. And indeed, do you need to pivot yourself? Do you need to think about other things? Are you fully present? And are you committed? Just before we hear the blog, Carl, could I get you to speak to really, like you said, it was cathartic in its process. Actually, I very much identified with the piece, and this is partly why we're showcasing it on the podcast. Could I get you to speak to any feedback that you did have because this piece was published in a number of journals, a number of places that actually really resonated with a lot of paramedics. Actually, could I get you to speak to any feedback you had just before we hear it?
Yeah, I had some feedback from one colleague in particular he'd had something in his mind that he'd sort of put to bed. Well, not really put to bed. He'd sort of hidden it away for 20 years when we were talking about it. And actually sort of reading the blog, it was a work issue. It was something that happened at work that he'd never ever dealt with. And actually, from reading the blog, it became the time that this is the time I need to deal with it. And actually, you know, it was really profound for him, and therefore it was really profound for me, because I felt, you know, even if your writing only affects positively a person, then it's been well worth the time, because I get something out of it anyway. If anybody else gets something out of it, it's a bit of a bonus. But I think the reason why people enjoyed it so much is because it can resonate with everybody, because I think everybody who's done this job for long enough has at some point felt how I felt. But actually, do we talk about it year on year? Well, up until a few years ago, the answer was definitely no, we don't talk about it. Whereas now it's very much a different world. And actually, talking about stuff like this is fully accepted, fully encouraged. You know, happy days. If nothing's changed in paramedic practice, then I'm glad this has, because this is truly important. However, it's that constant discussion that needs to happen, that actually, you know, we do feel like this, and if we just have an internal monologue, it is going to be unhealthy. Whereas if we can have discussions about it, you can feel that, okay, this is how I feel, but this seems pretty normal for how people in my role feels, and I'm not isolated, I'm not someone different, you know, I'm not inhumane, you know what I mean? And it's that interesting concept that we all have these thoughts, but because people don't talk about the thoughts enough, nobody knows that we're all thinking similar things. And it was really enjoyable writing this blog. I mean, I really enjoyed it, because I really looked deep inside me. And actually, I also just thought, you know what, it's amazing how that one instant where we talked about a Chinese takeaway was a catalyst to something really profound. And if I'd have ignored it and just gone on my way, and just like I have done with lots of other things, just park it, just forget about it, I wouldn't have had the joy that doing this has brought.
Yeah, listen, that's powerful. That's powerful, Carl. So here is the blog, the AI blog. Please do give us your feedback. We'd love to hear your feedback. Carl, it's always a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're stepping into a world most of us only really glimpse from the outside.
Flashing lights, sirens.
Exactly. A world that demands incredible strength, but, well, it often hides a really profound emotional cost. We're exploring the hidden landscape of frontline work.
And specifically through the eyes of a paramedic.
Yeah, and our source for this, it isn't some dry academic study or, you know, a news report.
No, this is deeply personal. It's a powerful reflection written by a paramedic called Normal or Numb, a paramedic's reflection.
It gives you this unfiltered look at the mental toll, doesn't it?
It really does.
So our mission today is to dive into this one source and really unpack the central question the author themselves is grappling with.
Which is?
Well, when you adapt to constant exposure to trauma, to suffering, are you actually building resilience, or are you maybe sliding into a kind of dangerous emotional numbness?
That's a crucial distinction. Yeah, it really matters.
And this reflection, it doesn't really ease you into it, does it?
Not at all. Right from the get-go, it confronts you with the core tension of the job. It highlights this specific moment that really stopped the paramedic in their tracks.
What happened?
They describe being on a call, standing in a room with a deceased person. They just confirmed death, done the checks.
Okay.
And then they realize they're having a completely casual conversation with their colleague. About what they wanted for dinner that night.
Wow. Just confirmed. Someone has died, and the mind immediately jumps to Chinese takeaway.
Exactly. That contrast is just incredibly stark, and it begs the question, how does a person even get to that point?
Right, so the reflection starts right there.
Pretty much. It sets the scene. Cold winter evening, category 1 call the most critical kind, someone found deceased, no CPR attempted.
Okay.
They get there quickly, find the houses, well, neglected. They head up to an attic room.
And the scene there.
A man, clearly deceased. Evidence of drug use around. So the immediate actions are purely, professional.
Procedural. Confirm death, call the police, start the paperwork.
Job done in that immediate task-focused sense. But while they're waiting for the police to arrive, that's when the dinner conversation happens.
Standing right there in that room.
Yeah. Talking about what they felt like eating, decided on Chinese, even figured out who was picking it up.
And then it hits them. The strangeness of it.
That's when the self-awareness kicks in. And the guilt. Leaving the house, they describe feeling guilty about discussing dinner plans, like you said, with a dead person still in the room.
Because for them, in that moment, the scene had just become what?
A simple incident to manage. That's the phrase they use.
Wow. That's chilling almost.
And it sparked some really profound questions for the paramedic. They asked themselves, how could I be so unaffected?
Reflecting on how they might have reacted before joining the service.
Exactly. They thought just a few years earlier, as a member of the public, seeing something like that would have been appalling, utterly shocking. But now
they could just carry on, talk about food.
So the question hangs there. What had happened to me? Was this kind of unaffected state a necessary professional shield, healthy adaptation?
Or was it something else?
Wow.
Something maybe damaging down the line?
And as the reflection goes on, it's clear this wasn't just a one-off incident. It wasn't an anomaly.
No.
The paramedic talks about other calls that followed soon after. Managing a dying patient, gasping for breath, dealing with someone really sick with sepsis, complex diabetes issues.
Sounds incredibly stressful.
Oh, yeah. And then responding to a choking victim needing immediate, life-saving maneuvers right there and then.
And they even mention thinking about extreme procedures during emergencies, right?
Yes, like speeding to hospital on a blue light run, lights and sirens going, and actively considering if they need to do something drastic like a needle cricothyroidotomy.
Which is basically making an emergency airway in the neck with a needle.
Essentially, yeah. Because they weren't sure they could get the patient to the hospital in time for more definitive care.
So the point the source is making is, these aren't rare events for them.
Not at all. For this paramedic, for their colleagues, these kinds of scenes and intense medical crises, human tragedies, they're described as commonplace.
What would shake an average person to their core is just
another day at the office? Tuesday, maybe?
And the longer they're in the job, the further they feel from that average reaction.
Which brings us right back to that central defining question of the whole reflection. Am I normal or numb?
That really is the crux of it, isn't it?
It's framed as the fundamental challenge. Is this emotional distance, this ability to function in chaos, is that normal adaptation, resilience?
Or is it numbness? A kind of shutting down of empathy, maybe, that carries its own big risks.
And the reflection suggests, well, maybe becoming numb is a coping strategy, perhaps even a necessary one, just to get through the shift, to do the job effectively.
But it's brutally honest about the potential downsides, too, if it's not healthy or if it's the only coping mechanism someone has.
Right. The paramedic points out the huge risk of burnout, for one.
And how it can affect how they're perceived.
Yeah, from the outside, it risks staff coming across as brash, uncaring, and unsympathetic individuals.
Which, as the author points out, damages not just the person, but the whole service's reputation. You need empathy in that job, surely.
You absolutely do. But how do you maintain it when you see so much, so often? It's a tough balance.
And this disconnect, it doesn't just stay at work, does it?
No, that's a key point. The paramedic talks about trying to tell a family member about their day, just sort of unemotionally reeling off a list of incidents.
And the family member is shocked, horrified.
Well, for the paramedic, it's just a summary of the shift. It keeps looping back to that question, adaptation or numbness, and what's the long-term cost?
They even wonder if the job attracts a certain type, someone maybe slightly wayward from the start.
It's a self-reflective point. But one of the most significant things the reflection stresses is how mental health decline usually happens in this line of work.
It's not sudden.
Rarely. It's described as a slow, gradually evolving situation. You develop coping mechanisms over time and becoming numb, as the author says.
May well be one of those strategies.
Right, but then there's this really powerful metaphor they use. The snowball.
Ah, yes, the snowball. Explain that.
Well, the idea is the longer you suppress emotions, the longer you rely solely on these coping mechanisms, the bigger the snowball of stress and unaddressed trauma gets.
And it starts rolling downhill.
Picking up speed. And The stark reality, according to the reflection, is that the snowball only comes to a stop when it runs out of energy.
Which happens how?
Either through a sudden crash, like a breakdown, or it just sort of melts away into obscurity on the flat, fading out. Neither sounds good.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
And the impact goes beyond work performance.
Far beyond. The reflection really emphasizes that, more importantly, it hits family life.
Yeah.
Relationships get strained. Sometimes, tragically, they're even destroyed by the weight brought home.
And opening up to family is hard.
Very. The author mentions it's often two things: wanting to protect loved ones from the awful things they see,
Which is understandable.
and also the feeling that family might just not get it. How do you explain that dinner conversation incident, you know? How do you make someone understand that headspace?
That's a very isolating experience then.
It can be. The paramedic also talks about their own stress curve. How even years into the job, long after the initial sharp stress of being newly qualified leveled off.
The overall stress was still climbing.
Yeah, that upward curve was still progressing. Not acute stress anymore, but this cumulative burden.
Fueled by what they call compounded post-incident stress and pre-incident anxiety.
Exactly. It's the buildup from past calls combined with the constant what's next anxiety. It just keeps adding up.
And there's another metaphor here, isn't there? The box.
The invisible box. Yeah, this is another really potent image. It's where you push all the difficult stuff, all the issues you can't deal with right now.
But the box can only hold so much.
That's the problem. And the really chilling part, the danger, is that there's no gauge on it.
You have no idea how full it is.
None at all. Until suddenly the lid just won't close anymore.
And when that happens, that main coping strategy, just push it away, it falls apart.
By which time, the paramedic notes you're probably already a long way down the line of becoming mentally unwell.
That's a scary thought. They also mention feeling disconnected.
Yes, looking at the world from behind a glass wall, feeling disengaged from the reality of other people's situations. And importantly, the source does acknowledge personal life issues add to this too. It's not all job-related, but the job definitely piles on the pressure.
Thinking about colleagues who've struggled, there's a question that comes up.
A really poignant question, they call it, that you often hear when someone leaves or hits a crisis. When did it all start going wrong?
Which highlights a bigger problem.
That staff in the ambulance service still wait too long before we acknowledge or act on a deterioration of our mental health state. There's a delay in recognizing or admitting there's a problem.
So the core belief coming through this reflection is, this work is tough on mental health long term.
That seems to be the underlying message. And that numbness, while maybe protective initially, it just pushes things into that box. It doesn't resolve them.
Okay, so given this pretty bleak picture, painted so honestly, what about solutions? Does the reflection offer any paths forward?
It does. It offers some practical ideas aimed at different groups.
Like for managers?
For leaders and managers, the suggestion is to really try and facilitate adjusted duties for staff who do come forward about difficulties.
Instead of just signing them off sick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The author finds it bizarre, strange, and a somewhat stupid concept that people are often paid to be off work, completely isolated, getting more distant, instead of being kept in the fold.
Supported with alternative duties.
Right. Keeping them connected, feeling valued, surrounded by colleagues who actually understand the pressures. That seems key.
That makes sense. And for colleagues, what's the advice there?
It's all about peer support. Simple but vital. Watch out for your friends and ask them to watch out for you.
And speak up if you're worried.
Critically, yes. As a friend, please speak up if you are concerned. Because, as the reflection points out, the person struggling is often the absolute last one to see it, or certainly the last one to accept it.
That takes courage, though, to intervene.
It does, but it could make all the difference.
And finally, for the individuals themselves, the paramedics, the frontline staff.
The message is stark. Keep a check on yourself and be honest. That honesty is crucial.
Admitting you're not okay is the first step.
But also the hardest. Acceptance is the hardest realization, they write. It's incredibly tough to face that.
But necessary.
Absolutely, because the author believes that with acceptance comes hope. With hope comes positivity, the belief that change is possible.
And that positivity leads to
a willingness to open up, to actually seek help, and to work towards recovery. It's a long road, but it has to start with being honest with yourself.
Wow. So this deep dive into just one paramedic's reflection, it's really given us a stark, very honest look inside the emotional demands of that job.
It really has. It shows how these professionals need incredible resilience, But the very ways they might cope, emotional detachment, that numbness.
They come with this potential cost, this slow buildup in that invisible box.
Yeah, that cumulative stress and trauma.
And the reflection really leaves us thinking about the importance of peer support, doesn't it? Colleagues needing to genuinely look out for each other.
And also that vital but difficult personal work of self-awareness, keeping that check on yourself, being honest, like the author says, that's paramount.
Definitely. And you know what, we focused on the paramedic experience here. The core issue it explores, this need to adapt emotionally in really demanding situations.
That resonates much wider, doesn't it?
I think so. Many of us face versions of this, whether it's in other high-stress jobs or just challenging personal circumstances. We all build coping mechanisms, defenses. So maybe the final thought for you, the listener, is where do you draw that line between healthy adaptation, maybe to necessary compartmentalizing, and potentially harmful numbness? How might you spot the signs?
The signs of your own invisible box getting maybe a bit too full, or feeling that snowball starting to gain a bit too much speed.
Yeah, before it becomes a crisis. Something to definitely mull over.
Food for thought, for sure.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
You're listening to the Pre-Hospital Care podcast on the Medics Academy Network.